It opens in fire. A circle of people sits silently, while flames consume them not in chaos, but in total calm. Their leader smiles, reaching toward one final member. No one tries to run. No one cries out. The horror lies in their certainty. When Bad Dreams was released in 1988, it was quickly branded a clone of A Nightmare on Elm Street. It had dreams, a scarred villain, a female lead haunted by a past. But beneath the surface, it was something else, entirely colder, more grounded, and disturbingly plausible. This wasn't about monsters with claws. It was about what happens when therapy becomes manipulation. When institutions meant to heal start using your mind against you. Bad Dreams didn't take place in the supernatural. It took place in locked rooms, beneath hospital lighting, with words disguised as help. Though overlooked at the time, the film left behind a trail scenes that felt too raw, details that didn't quite add up, and moments that seemed designed to blur memory and delusion. Years later, unearthed footage and strange crew testimonies only added to the unease. Suddenly, it wasn't just a movie. It was a mirror that never gave a clear reflection. Cynthia survived something, but what she walked into afterward may have been worse. And Harris, whether spirit or man, he never really left the room. These are 20 weird facts you didn't know about Bad Dreams. 1,988 fragments of truth stitched into fiction, some of which were never meant to be noticed at all. Fact 1. The opening was inspired by real fires and real faith. The first image in Bad Dreams is unforgettable. A cult gathered inside a farmhouse, calm and silent as flames rise around them. It looks cinematic, but the idea didn't come from a script, it came from history. The filmmakers took cues from actual mass suicides, particularly Jonestown, but also lesser-known cult incidents in California. 1. From the 1,960 seconds, involved a leader who preached that fire was the purest escape from corruption. That twisted logic shaped how the film portrayed Harris, not as a monster, but as someone whose beliefs made sense to the people who followed him. Originally, the movie didn't open with the fire. Early cuts began afterward, with the smoldering remains and a single survivor, but preview audiences felt unmoored, so the order was reversed, showing the fire first grounded the story and locked in the trauma we're about to witness unfold. It's not a flashback, it's a ritual, and it sets the rules for what follows. Belief, once planted, doesn't burn away. It lingers. Was this just a more effective opening, or was it a confession hiding in plain sight? Fact 2. Jennifer Rubin wasn't told how real the flames would be. When Cynthia steps through fire in the cult's final moments, the moment feels surreal, like dream logic wrapped in smoke. But behind the scenes, it was dangerously real. Jennifer Rubin was informed she'd be surrounded by controlled fire, but the execution went further. In the first take, a flare-up caught the edge of her coat. The shot continued. Her reaction, wide-eyed and breathless, wasn't performance, it was instinct. Rubin later described the scene as unfiltered. Crew members were more direct. She wasn't acting, one said. She was surviving. There were no stunt doubles, no trick cuts, just one actor, one take, and real fire. The result is a moment that hits harder than most horror effects, not because of what it shows, but because of what it risked. Fact 3. The hospital wasn't fictional, it was a real abandoned wing. Cynthia awakens in a hospital that feels too detailed to be designed, and it was. The film used a decommissioned psychiatric facility in California, one left mostly intact after its closure. The production was allowed to film under strict rules. Minimal alteration, no permanent changes. That meant the rooms, hallways, and even furniture were all real. The circular therapy room with the mirrored glass? It already existed, they just turned the cameras on. Crew members reported dizziness and tension while filming inside. Some blamed the building's air quality. Others thought it was something else, not haunted, exactly, but not neutral either. The realism adds weight. You can't fake decay like that. The building wasn't dressed, it was revealed, and maybe it wasn't done telling its stories. Fact 4. The mirror scene was added late and almost pulled again. One of Cynthia's first unsettling moments comes when she catches her reflection doing something subtly wrong. It's quick, quiet, and it wasn't in the original script. That shot came from a studio note. They wanted a visual cue that hinted at something supernatural. Director Andrew Fleming wasn't keen. He thought ambiguity was more effective. But when he saw how the crew blended a body double and a soft visual shift, he reconsidered. Later, there was talk of removing it again, fearing it gave too much away. But it stayed. Interestingly, international cuts extended the moment, making the reflection more obvious. Some fans prefer the shorter version, where your brain fills in the fear. Was Cynthia seeing Harris? or seeing herself fracture. Sometimes the scariest reflection is the one that isn't quite yours. Fact 5. A real psychiatric case shaped the first on-screen death. The film's first death, a patient falling from a window, seems abrupt and haunting, but it was based on a real-life case. Screenwriter Stephen E. D'Souza borrowed the scenario from a psychiatric file where a recently released man jumped from a hospital, claiming someone was waiting in the trees. The same phrase is echoed in Bad Dreams moments before the fall. Originally, the film showed more blood, panic, response, but test viewers found it less disturbing when too much was visible, so the aftermath was cut, leaving just the fall and the silence. The death lands harder because it doesn't explain itself. It just happens fast, brutal, and quiet. It leaves behind a question, not an answer, and that's what shifts the film's tone from strange to dangerous. Fact 6. Dream scenes were shot last in Look It. By the time Cynthia starts seeing Harris in her dreams, the film has entered a different gear. But those surreal sequences weren't part of the main shoot. They came later. The producers wanted more visual disorientation, so a small team reassembled to film the dreams. They were shot out of order, on tighter schedules, and with more experimental camera setups. Inconsistencies crept in hair length, costume details, lighting shifts, but instead of fixing them, the crew leaned in. The gaps made the dreams feel more fractured, more wrong. One shot of Harris moving in reverse was actually filmed backward and flipped a last-minute idea that stuck. Were these visions of trauma or evidence of deeper manipulation? The film never clarifies. That's what makes them work. Fact 7. The group therapy scenes were half real. The therapy group is the film's emotional core, vulnerable, chaotic, unstable. That's partly because many scenes weren't tightly scripted. The director asked the cast to improvise, staying in character and reacting to each other. Several actors drew from personal experiences. Some scenes went further than planned. Jennifer Rubin said one session made her cry unexpectedly. Fleming kept rolling. It felt too real to stop, he said. That blurred line between acting and something more personal gives those scenes their raw discomfort. It wasn't a safe space, and that's exactly what the film needed. Fact 8. The bathtub scene was recut to disturb you sooner. A patient's death in a bathtub is one of the film's most chilling visuals, red spreading through clear water. But the first cut of that scene felt too restrained. Originally, the scene had no music and delayed the reveal of blood until the final shot. Test viewers weren't as unsettled as hoped, so the editors made two major changes. They introduced a low, unsettling ambient score and moved the blood appearance earlier. That simple shift, letting the audience see the water begin to darken before the body, changed everything. The dread started early and never let up. It's a lesson in psychological pacing. Fear isn't always about what happens. It's about when you notice that it already has. Fact 9. Richard Lynch lived as Harris on and off set. Richard Lynch, who played Harris, didn't break character easily. Crew members recall him avoiding casual interaction, remaining in costume long after takes ended, and speaking in a hushed tone as if still delivering lines. One grip said he once found Lynch alone, reciting monologues into a dark mirror. His presence bled into the performance. Co-stars said they never fully relaxed around him. Even off-camera, Lynch made people uneasy, which only deepened the impact of his role. He didn't perform Harris. He stayed with him, and by the time the shoot wrapped, few could tell where the role stopped. Fact 10. A kill scene was removed from every TV version. If you only saw Bad Dreams on TV, you missed one of its most disturbing deaths, a self-inflicted wound with a broken mirror. That scene was cut from all televised versions for being too graphic, but even the theatrical version was toned down. In uncut VHS copies, the moment lingers longer, revealing a prosthetic effect that looked painfully real. The scene was never reinstated. Some said it crossed a line the rest of the film carefully walked. It wasn't the gore that unsettled, it was the isolation, and perhaps how plausible it felt. Fact 11. The therapy room had no ceiling on purpose. Visually, the group therapy room feels oppressive, but in reality, it was open because it had no ceiling. The set was built without a roof to allow for overhead shots and lighting angles. This design gave the director more freedom and more problems. Light bled in unpredictably. Mix dipped into frame. At one point, a light malfunction nearly sparked a fire. But the emotional impact was unexpected. Jennifer Rubin said it felt like something was always watching from above. In a story about surveillance, suggestion, and control, that detail wasn't just technical. It was thematic. Fact 12. A psychiatrist quietly rewrote the doctor's lines. Dr. Beresford doesn't talk much, and when he does, it's measured, precise, and often unsettling. That tone didn't come from the screenwriters, it came from a real psychiatrist. Midway through production, a consultant was brought in to make the dialogue more realistic. He ended up changing how the character spoke entirely. No more textbook jargon, just calm questions and clinical detachment. The change worked. Beresford no longer felt like a movie doctor. He felt like someone used to watching without reacting. And in a film full of manipulations, that made him harder to trust. Fact 13. One quiet line. Gave everything away, but nobody heard it. In a group session, Cynthia says something low, almost mumbled, "What if he's not dead? Just out of reach?" It slips by fast, easy to miss. But that line was meant to shift the story. In the script, it was flagged as a turning point the moment the viewer should begin questioning the supernatural angle. Was Harris really haunting her, or was he still alive? The scene that follows distracts with another character's breakdown, and the line gets lost. Even sharp-eyed viewers often miss it. Years later, fans rewatching the film identified this moment as a subtle signal, one that could have changed how they saw the rest of the story. Instead, it faded into the background, a missed clue in plain sight. Fact 14. Burn makeup was applied in a room full of silence. Harris's charred face is unforgettable, but how it was created says as much about the actor as the effect. Richard Lynch asked for total silence during makeup. No music, no conversation. He wanted the process to feel ritualistic. Each session took hours, during which Lynch sat unmoving, staring into a mirror. That silence spread. The makeup team stopped joking. The atmosphere shifted. Lynch also suggested the final touch, a glossy film on the burns, to make them look freshly scorched, not healed, not closed. The effect worked. Harris didn't need to speak to be terrifying. His presence said enough. Fact 15. The hallway scene worked better without words. Near the end of the film, Cynthia walks alone through a dim, flickering corridor. She doesn't say a word. That wasn't the plan. Originally, she had lines, quiet reactions, names whispered into the dark. But on set, the director changed his mind. He told Rubin to remain silent, let the space do the talking. The result is one of the film's most haunting moments. No music, no dialogue, just a long walk into nowhere. Rubin later said it was the only scene that felt fully internal, not horror, but emotional collapse. Sometimes silence reveals more than sound. Fact 16. The original ending was cut after test audiences laughed. In the early version, Harris returned as a ghost, flaming, spectral, almost mythic. But when shown to a test crowd, it didn't scare them, it made them chuckle. The tone felt wrong, too dramatic, too unreal. So the ending was changed. Harris wasn't supernatural. He was real, alive, and manipulating everything from inside the hospital. The hauntings became experiments. The dreams were drugs. The fear, suddenly, was all man-made. And with one rewrite, the film lost its ghost and gained something worse. A villain who didn't need magic, just control. Fact 17. Jennifer Rubin wanted one shot removed and lost the argument. In the final act, there's a brief close-up. Cynthia realizes something. Her face shifts. The audience connects the dots. Rubin didn't like it. She asked the director to take the shot out. Her reason? It gave away the twist too early. She believed ambiguity would serve the story better, let the viewer wonder longer. Andrew Fleming declined. He felt the film needed that anchor, a visual cue that Cynthia had reached clarity. To Rubin, that shot broke the tension. To Fleming, it created it. It stayed. And viewers still debate whether it revealed too much or just enough. Fact 18. The final fire was mostly illusion, but one burn wasn't. At the climax, flames return, but not like before. Cynthia walks through a fiery corridor that seems unreal. That's because it was. The hallway couldn't be safely rigged, so the crew used projections, smoke, and wind to fake the fire. The disorienting effect made it feel more like a hallucination than a real blaze. But Harris's final moment when he catches fire was real. Controlled flames, stunt work, and practical effects. What adds weight? Richard Lynch had survived a real fire decades earlier, leaving scars he carried through life. In fiction, his character burns again. It wasn't just a scene, it was a reflection. Fact 19. The last line was dubbed in post over something else. Cynthia ends the film saying, "I think I'm going to be okay." But she never said that on set. Two earlier versions were tried, "I don't dream anymore," and "Maybe now I can sleep." Both felt too dark for studio tastes. So in post-production, a new line was recorded and layered over the original. Watch closely, Rubin's lips don't match. The words were changed, but the emotion wasn't. It's a fake resolution. A comfort line pasted onto a face that doesn't quite believe it. And that mismatch is what linger. Fact 20. The therapist was almost revealed as the real believer. Dr. Beresford exits the story without explanation. He says little, offers no closure, just walks away. That wasn't always the plan. A sequel was outlined that revealed Beresford as a former cult member, a true believer who'd infiltrated the institution to continue Harris's work. The plot was scrapped, but traces remain. His flat tone, his refusal to challenge Harris's methods, the way he watches more than he helps. The film never says what he truly believes, but maybe it didn't need to. Bonus fact: the dummy was too real and too wrong. To film the bathtub death, the team used a full-body silicone dummy. It was eerily lifelike, maybe too much. After shooting, it was locked in a prop room. The next day, someone found it moved. No one had the key. No one took credit. When asked to use it again for pickups, several crew members refused. One simply said, "It didn't feel like a prop anymore." The dummy wasn't stored. It wasn't reused. It was thrown out quietly and without paperwork. Some things don't belong on shelf. Was Bad Dreams ever about ghosts? Or was it always about what happens when the mind is no longer your own? Tell us in the comments. Which detail felt too real to be fiction and which forgotten horror film deserves a second look?